In our last piece of week 1, we're going to talk about personality. This is an important topic, although we think we know a lot about it, perhaps, but sometimes it turns out that we don't. First, want to contrast it with ability. When we think about the differences between ability and personality, it seems sometimes as if they're related, and there are some places where they intersect. Ability is what a person can do versus what a person is like. Personality is those tendencies that a person has, a tendency to have particular attitudes and affective responses and moods, tendencies to behave in particular ways. What a person can do, of course, is their capabilities. There are central issues in organization behavior, such as training. We want to know about ability and personality in designing a training program for somebody. Selection. Ability and personality should predict whether we're going to choose somebody to join our organization. And re-engineering, which of course is changing the job after somebody is in it so that it will suit them better in terms of their ability and personality. We do a lot of ability testing. Physical and psychomotor abilities are tested. Mental abilities, very important. We often are testing G, or general intelligence, because it covers a great deal of ground, although it certainly doesn't cover everything. Personality testing is a separate category, and we do a lot of that too. I'm sure all of you have taken personality tests. The question then is, what exactly do they do for the organization? Prior to getting there, we want to talk a little bit about a couple of key questions. So, first of all, our general intelligence, G, and conscientiousness, that notion that if I'm told what to do and I agree to do it, I'm going to definitely do it, are these enough to look at in considering employee selection? So this is a maximizing approach. It says, I want to hire all the people that are as highly intelligent and highly conscientious as I possibly can. One might argue, of course, that if we want the best employees, that might be a way to go at it. But needless to say, there's other considerations, and fit is the major issue. So I want somebody who's going to fit in with the rest of my workforce. I want somebody who's going to fit in with the situation. And I want somebody who isn't going to leave right away because they found a better opportunity. If I have a very low-level job that's rather repetitive, I don't want to hire somebody who's highly intelligent because they're very likely to leave pretty quickly. So I want to consider both this maximizing approach in some cases, get the best employees, but I also want to consider fit. The second question is, why do some organizations have sliding scales in terms of ability for sex, age, and race? One of the reasons for this, of course, is that most jobs are not one-dimensional. So if we think of police units, for example, we're not only concerned with the person's ability to shoot a gun and run down the street. This is what we see on TV, but most work is about diminishing conflicts, stopping them before they start, not running down the street. So what we'd like to see, of course, is the availability of women in the force if there's a domestic violence incident or a potential for one. We'd like to see senior people who can have a lot of different solutions to many different problems. And lastly, of course, we want the police force to reflect the community. And if we don't have any African Americans on our force at a reasonably high level, say at a sergeant's level or a detective's level, then of course the community is going to be very skeptical that the organization is acting in their interest. So why do we have these sliding ability scales? We do know that women and older people don't do as well on physical abilities. We know that sometimes minorities do not do as well on testing that is done for promotion. So if we want the unit to reflect the community and reflect those other things besides physical ability, we're going to have some need for these standards to move a little bit. Does it seem fair? Maybe not. Does it seem effective? For this type of organization, it is. Okay, so does personality predict behavior? Let's do a little quiz. This is called Guess Your Myers-Briggs because it's pretty far from the original Myers-Briggs type indicator. And many of you may have taken this or a similar test like the Berkman or some other omnibus personality test. Here we see on this page, we see two basic dimensions. You can be either an extrovert or an introvert. You can't be both in this Guess Your Myers-Briggs quiz. So you have to look at the set of adjectives underneath each of the headings and choose which one you are. So you look at the adjectives under extroversion and see which ones seem like you, and then if that's more than the adjectives that are under introversion, then you have to be an extrovert. Same thing with sensing and intuiting. On this page, if you're an extrovert, give yourself an E. If you're an introvert, give yourself an I. If you're a sensor, give yourself an S. Give yourself an N for intuiting. And then we have two more dimensions on the next page. So you can be a thinker or a feeler. You can be a judger or a perceiver. And you should make those decisions the same way. You will end up with a scale score of 4 letters. For example, you'll be typed as an ESTJ, and you can obviously slow this tape down and go back and go through this exercise. So if I told you that more managers are ESTJs than any other type, you might start to think, well, gee, this has relevance for the management world. The problem is what I just said was about choice. It's about people choosing to be managers and the fact that more ESTJs choose to be managers than other types. I did not say ESTJs are more effective managers. If I were going to use this Myers-Briggs, for example, as a way of making HR decisions, I would have to be able to show using validity data that ESTJ, being an ESTJ, actually predicts managerial effectiveness. And so far, that doesn't seem to necessarily be the case. So one of the things that we want to consider is in any HR decision, we need to think about, do we have the validity evidence to make this based on some sort of personality test? There are better personality tests, such as the Big Five, integrity and honesty tests that work quite well in predicting whether somebody is going to be honest and not steal and not cook the books and all of those good things that we've seen so much of recently. So it's perfectly reasonable to use these tests that have that kind of validity, but not so much for those that don't have data that show they predict behavior. Does personality predict behavior? Well, sometimes. So weak situations allow people to choose the behavior based on the personality, and that's because they prefer it. That's what they do. They do what they prefer in weak situations that provide that discretion. In strong situations, we all know many roles, and we're perfectly willing to play them as long as the incentives are high enough. So if you're looking for a job and you go out on a job interview, you're going to be extroverted. That's the way to get the job. So strong situations are going to tell you what to do. When you're sitting in a classroom, even if you're extroverted, you may not talk a whole lot. What's your role? Your role is to sit there and listen to the professor. So strong situations are going to indicate what you should do, and typically we comply. Weak situations allow us to choose what we would like to do. Over time, personality also has an impact on behavior because people repeatedly, when they do get discretionary time, make that decision to do something that's consistent with their personality. So if we have an employee for any length of time, we're going to see his or her personality come out in their behavior. This is the reason why we think personality is very important in organizations, because we do know it affects behavior, and it's going to affect how that person gets along with other people.